Hi, everybody, and welcome to 5 Mistakes That You Should Avoid While Completing Your College Application. My name is Jacqueline Rowe, and I work in Stony Brook undergraduate admissions, and I am joined by Emilio. You can introduce yourself.
Yes, hello. My name is Emilio. I'm an admissions counselor here at Stony Brook University's undergraduate admissions office. A little bit about what I do. So I'm an admissions counselor. My territories right now are typically out-of-state territories. So that means I work with students from all over the country, really, and work with them all the way to their initial application coming in throughout the admissions process, all the way up until they become current students. So it's a great process to work with those students and hear those students who are so excited about becoming future Seawolves. So thank you so much for joining us, and I hope you take away some really useful information today.
Me too. I love working with prospective students, helping them through the college admissions process. Sometimes I feel like the perception of college admissions is that we are just like scary people who only want to deny you and remove you from, ever coming into our university. And that's so not the case. Our titles tend to be admissions counselors because we really do things like that. We're counseling, we're helping you through the process. And we know that college, so much of it, especially, as a first year, is all about fit. So we want to make sure that you are finding the right thing. But the first step with everything is going through the college application process. On average, students apply to anywhere from 5 to 10 colleges, and every college application process is different. There are different deadlines. There are different ways that they are considered. Some have interviews, some don't. There's a whole bunch of different qualifications that you may need to have depending on programs and schools that you're applying for. So we're going to be talking a little bit about the mistakes that we have seen that we want to make sure that you're avoiding, and then how to avoid them and what you should really consider while you're going through the college application process. So let's get started.
Yeah, and I'll just definitely add to make sure that, when you're listening throughout the live today, the YouTube live, to make sure to know that we're talking about Stony Brook specific things sometimes. So make sure you're checking in and doing your research for all the institutions that you're applying to.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Emilio. So we're going to get started with mistake number 1. One of the mistakes that people always think about is thinking that the deadline is the date that you should submit your application. And there's so many students who are applying to all these different colleges, and so many different colleges have different deadlines. So for example, our first year deadline is January 15th. And yes, that deadline does in fact matter. And while it is the application deadline, it's really the deadline for everything. So when you're submitting not just your application, you have to get in transcripts, you have to get in letters of recommendation, test scores. If they're optional, you have to let us know that you're going test optional. If you didn't apply test optional, you want to be considered, you have to make sure those official scores are in there. Your essay has to be loaded. So when you apply on the deadline, everything tends to show up after the fact. Can you give an example of that, Emilio?
Yeah, so deadlines are super important. And just to continue on there, you're submitting everything, right? So those transcripts, those essays, those recommendations, those test scores. And so you're going to want to make sure you do these things in advance because sometimes there's some additional components or additional things that the admissions committees might ask of you. So it's very, very vital that you pay attention to deadlines. And institutions really will have different types of deadlines. So that can include early action, early decision, and or rolling or regular decisions deadlines as well. Okay, so early action, typically you would apply sometime in November. You would receive your decisions pretty early on. However, this early action decision is non-binding. Okay, for early decisions, typically you would apply sometime in November as well. Receive decisions early. However, for an early decision, admissions decision, those are binding. Okay, so you must commit to that institution. So just keep that in mind when you're applying. And then us here at Stony Brook, we're more so rolling basis admissions. Okay, so that means institutions review applications on an ongoing basis, considering space availability. Okay, so we do have a priority deadline here. As Jacqueline mentioned, it's January 15th. And the great thing about our priority deadline is that if you apply by then, you'll have access to things such as honors programs, to be reviewed for merit-based awards, and other really great additional resources. So definitely keep in mind those deadlines and apply early on.
Absolutely. One of the mistakes like we were talking about is especially students who want to be considered for our honors program. That's for us, that's the biggest thing. And they're like, okay, I applied on January 15th. And I was like, but it takes several days for us to get that application process and several days for us to get your documents. And if you want to be considered for, high achieving programs, scholarships, and things like that, the earlier the better. And you can always apply without having absolutely everything all together. And that's okay. Like, that's okay. So we can talk to you about how when you get your application in at Stony Brook, you'll have this amazing application portal that will tell you everything that you're still missing, what you need to get in. And then once it's processed, it gets marked off your checklist on your portal. So you'll be all set as far as your application's in, but not everything else is in. That's okay. It can come in on a rolling basis. And don't worry, for those who are asking if this is being recorded, yes, it is live, but it will also be recorded on our YouTube, so you can watch it at your leisure. And for those who are watching a recording, hi. So let's jump into mistake number 2. Mistake number 2 is applying to colleges that you have never visited, whether that's virtually or in person. We know that we are living in crazy times, and there's a lot to consider when you want to, where you want to apply to, what you want to be considered for, how far away from home you want to go, what's even going on in that state right now, like during the pandemic. And a lot of people, like for myself, I'm not going to tell you how old I am, but way back when I was applying to colleges, I didn't visit the colleges that I applied to. And so I ended up just choosing that one of where I thought I needed to go and how that fit was, but I'll have no basis of comparison. Nowadays, there's so many options and ways to visit virtually. Some places are offering in-person campus tours like we are, but they're on a very small, limited base. So that virtual tour, attending virtual events and stuff like that, connecting with those schools is so important. And do that now so you're not waiting to the last minute. Emilio is even going to be, would do recruiting, we'll be doing events during the fall, and can tell you a little bit about the admissions counselor side.
Yeah, so definitely it's very vital to visit these institutions, right? Because as Jacqueline mentioned in the initial part of the presentation, you want to see what's the best fit for you, okay? And we understand here at SBU that we're getting students, prospective students from all over the country, but also all over the globe. So to really cater to these students who may not be able to take an easy trip to us here at Stony Brook University, we want to make sure that we offer those virtual information sessions, those virtual tours. We have in-person facilitated tours by our amazing tour guides, but we do also have in-person self-guided tours. So we have an array of options all on our website. And it's just really best to find the best resource or option or way to visit the school that really aligns with you and what your needs and abilities are.
Absolutely. And just letting you guys know that we're going to go through our mistakes, and then we'll be answering the questions that we were able to get to at the end of the presentation. So we're going to jump right in as we move quite along to mistake number 3. When you're picking colleges to apply to, comparing sticker price and net price. Some of you have never even heard of those terms, and that's totally fine. Maybe you've heard like whispers of a net price or seen something called a net price calculator. And so I'm here to break down something that we really wish in admissions more people understood, and that's sticker price versus net price. So sticker price is like when you see a car and there's a sticker on it, that's sticker price. It's the price that you see prior to any financial aid, any scholarship, any merit-based aid, needs-based aid, anything that you've received to help pay for colleges. That tuition is across the board for all students. And so that is kind of the overall price that you have to consider. And then once you are eligible for financial aid or merit-based aid, scholarships, things like that, whether that's internal or external scholarships, that's going to come off of what you end up paying when you go to that college. So as you're comparing colleges, as I mentioned before, there's an amazing thing called the net price calculator. Every college has to have it. And you can put in information from your taxes, of your GPA and SAT, what you may be eligible for as far as scholarships, and get an idea about what would you pay at that institution, as well as other institutions that you're considering, so that you can look in that final score. The biggest thing is, let's say we have a student who is saying, oh, I received a small scholarship from you, but I received a large scholarship from this other university. And X university is $40,000, but they got a $15,000 scholarship. But at Stony Brook, they got a $5,000 scholarship, and they are New York's, they're an out-of-state student, which we have different tuitions because we are a SUNY school for in-state and out-of-state. The scholarship sounds bigger at the other university, but ultimately you would pay less at Stony Brook because of the difference in our tuition. And so that's really important to note when you're comparing colleges as far as cost goes. And some parents may be really more focused on that. Some students may be really more focused on that. And then the other thing to consider is on-campus housing. How does that factor in? Going beyond that base tuition price, that initial sticker price, to really figure out what's going to be affordable for you and your family.
Yeah, I agree. That's such a, for some students more than others, that component of what you're paying the institution is such a vital part in making that college decision, right? It definitely was for me when I was applying to college. So make sure you're really comparing that and make sure you know the final price as to how much you're actually paying the institution, as regardless of scholarships, there may be an institution that has a smaller price, and that might be more beneficial to you. So with all the different components, make sure you're definitely taking into account what that total cost of attendance will be for you specifically.
And before we get to mistake number 4, I just have to laugh at both me and Melio's wearing glasses. Our computers are reflected directly in our eyeglasses. It always makes me laugh when I do live videos. So now we're going to jump into mistake number 4. So mistake number 4 is applying undecided when you're considering a restricted major. How do I know if I'm considering a restricted major? You can ask. Different schools may have different programs in specific schools. Like they might have different colleges and universities, and you have to apply to different ones. Here at Stony Brook, you're applying to the university and you're picking a major of interest. But we do have restricted programs. And those programs have different admission criteria. However, students think, oh, that criteria is a little bit higher. And even though I'm interested in it, I'm not sure if I should declare that major because I'm between, for us, one of our restricted programs is College of Engineering and Applied Sciences. I'm between mechanical and computer engineering. And so I'm going to apply undecided because I'm not sure which one I want. But both of those programs are restricted programs. And so it's always more beneficial to the student, especially as they may want to declare one of those programs later, to declare one of the ones that they're even considering, because they will find once they're here is much easier to change within restricted programs than it is to try to then declare that program later. Emilio?
Yeah, so just thinking about the Stony Brook process, because that's what I'm knowledgeable on. So applicants who do not specify specific major when they're applying to us here at SBU, they're going to be considered to admission to the university as a whole rather than that particular program. So just as you mentioned, if you're interested in one of our restricted programs, and that can include computer science, information systems, engineering, applied math and statistics, our business programs, and definitely some health science programs as well. So those are all considered restricted, right? And so if you have an interest in any of those programs, you're definitely going to want to apply directly, because what happens is if you come as a general student undecided, just keep in mind space availability, and keep in mind you're going to have to really compete with other students. The process gets more competitive, and space availability is definitely a factor that you're going to want to consider as well. So if you are interested in that program and you know that you qualify and you meet those requirements, we encourage you to get right into that program and get started as soon as possible.
Absolutely. And that's not to say that you can't apply undecided. Plenty of students do. And I think it's something like 50% of freshmen change their major. And
yes,
so
I did tons of
common.
times.
Absolutely. It happens all the time. Changing your major is okay. Applying undecided is okay. It's just that talk to the admissions office. That's what we're here for. If you're between programs, if you're not really sure what the best course of action is to take, ask. That's what we're here. It's not going to be used against you. It's not going to be held against you when we're considering your application. It's always for the best to talk about what are your plans and what do you want to be considered for. And then, of course, our last mistake number 5, thinking how test optional works at one school or university or for one program is kind of true for everything. And so the way the test optional applies to Stony Brook might be different from the way it applies to another university. And even within Stony Brook, as we're figuring this all out, because it's pretty new to us as well, some of our programs are still figuring out what they want. Now, for us, all of our majors at the undergraduate level do have to come by the same thing. So all of our programs, even those restricted majors we mentioned before, for 2022 are going to be test optional. Yay! But our honors programs, for example, we have a Scholars for Medicine program, an 8-year bachelor's MD program, does require test scores this upcoming year, but didn't last year because we were still figuring out what the best process was for applicants. And so as we're figuring that out, we're trying to get that information out as quickly as possible, but it's a learning process for us, just like it is for you guys. And so checking in with those schools, does the honors program have different criteria? Do scholarships have different criteria? Check with each individual school or university that you're looking into, because we are all still figuring it out just like you guys are.
Yeah, and I'll just really emphasize that aspect of researching. So definitely do your part and research these different institutions, and don't assume that one institution's policy can be duplicated for every other institution that you're interested in. And most likely they're not, because you have different interests and you're applying to an array of different schools. So make sure you're looking at that in regards to all these different mistakes that we're referring to. But just to mention here at SBU, so we have definitely extended that test optional policy all the way up until spring 2023. So if you're applying for any program, undergraduate program, that's up to that spring 2023 term, we will review your application holistically with or without those test scores. Okay, so what that means is we're taking into account your academics, we're taking into account what you've done, so community involvement, extracurriculars. We're looking at trends in your transcripts and really looking at you holistically as a person. And that's why we have that recommendation and that personal statement piece. Okay, so we're ready and we're prepared and we're happy to review your application with or without those. So making sure you're looking at those test scores and seeing if it's going to strengthen or possibly weaken your application is definitely, this is a good time to look at that and definitely think about that a little bit more. But like Jacqueline mentioned earlier on, we are here to help you. So definitely do your research, but also feel free to reach out to these admissions teams as well.
Awesome. So now we're going to get into some rapid fire questions. Are you ready for lightning round, Emilio?
Yes, I am ready.
Great. So let's go with our first question. Nora asked, if I applied before January 15th, when should I know if I was admitted or rejected? And that's a great question, because as Emilio mentioned, we do look at applications on a rolling basis. We make sure that we notify all our first year applicants of their decision for fall by April 1st. However, we start considering students earlier in the year. So somewhere around November, December is when we first start rolling out our decisions on an ongoing basis. And those who applied early and completed their application may get a decision earlier. It is not guaranteed. And because there's so many different factors, you may have completed your application at the same time as a friend, and one of you will get a decision in December and the other one will get it in late January or early February. It is because there are so many other factors we have to take into consideration, including program of interest, including reviewing your essays, reviewing your letter of recommendation, making sure that you have everything in. But that's why there's no hard and fast, like if you applied on this date, 2 weeks later, you'll get a decision. It's not as easy. All decisions are made by April 1st, but they're kind of made on an ongoing basis over the course of several months.
Yeah, and I just want to, make sure you're looking at, so us here, like Jacqueline said, we're rolling admissions, and we do have a priority deadline, so you can have some opportunities for some other things and resources here at the institution. But you're going to want to make sure you're looking carefully as to whether or not you're applying early action, early decision, as that can definitely impact when you receive that decision. And my bad if you hear, my apologies if you hear any noise in the background. I do live in Brooklyn, so there's a whole bunch of city noise happening right now.
It's okay. My husband sneezed before. I wasn't sure if that was on here. So that actually also answers Nuij, which is question about is the deadline binding. For us, like I said, it is January 15th is a priority deadline. We consider some applicants after that point, but if you apply after that deadline, it's on a space available basis. So there's a lot of other factors. So get that application in as early as you can. Can I still meet an admissions counselor on campus? Definitely going to vary based on the school. Here at Stony Brook, we're really encouraging people to utilize our virtual information sessions, call, text, email, however you want to get in touch with us. But of course, we won't turn anyone away who comes in during our open office hours to speak with someone. Our campus tours are currently live in person, but because of the restricted capacity and the demand for campus tours, because they are so limited, they fill up super fast. So make sure that if you're interested in campus tours, that you're in inquiry with the school that you're interested in, so we can let you know as soon as they become available. But have you met with anyone, Emilio, so far in the last year and a half?
Yeah, tons of people. And I think in the environment and world that we're living in now, there's just so many virtual options. And from students who really take that extra step and reach out to an admissions counselor, I've been able to offer virtual Zoom settings. So I'm sitting here in front of a computer, I can see your face, potentially speaking to the prospective student and their family, and it still sort of feels personable in a way. So definitely find ways around what we're going through now, and try to visit schools and speak to admissions counselors as much as you can.
Awesome. This is a good question. What's the difference between Common App and SUNY App? To us, you can fill out either one, and it doesn't matter to us. For New York State students, it might impact you because, for example, New York State transcripts are easily sent to colleges via the SUNY app. You can also have a Common App and have it request from your school counselor your transcript to be sent to us. So the preference is yours. If you're applying to a lot of colleges on the SUNY app, great, then use the SUNY app. If you're applying to a lot of Common App, split it in half. There's no preference for us which application you use. If you don't get into a restricted major, can you still be accepted as undecided? Amelia, you want to talk very briefly about AOIs?
Yeah, so we have something here called AOIs, Jacqueline mentioned, which stands for Area of Interest. So what that means is, so for restricted programs, there are some requirements, right? So there may be some prerequisite courses that you need to take. You may have to have a certain GPA in a specific field of courses. There's different requirements for different programs. So maybe you're slightly above one of these requirements, or you don't meet all of the requirements. We may find you as such a viable candidate, and you're so close that we'll offer you admission as an area of interest student. So for example, area of interest in one of our engineering programs, you would pretty much work with your advisors here to meet those other prerequisite courses to eventually apply for direct admission into that program. All right, just note that it is not guaranteed because not all students will fulfill those requirements. Maybe along the way you change your mind and you have other interests. But by being an AOI student, you have access to resources and advisors who are going to help you get to that next point.
Perfect. So that kind of ties into what is considered a good GPA, which Destiny asked, and it is wildly subjective. As Amelia mentioned, we're really going to look at everything on your application. Your overall GPA is just one component. The types of grades that you're getting in your classes, your region scores if you're a New York State student, how your grades trend. If you've applied for a science major, how did you do in your math and science courses? We're really looking, when he says holistically, and there are a lot of applicants, we're looking at everything, which is also why it takes us sometimes to get to those applications, and why it's important to apply early. Now we are winding down in our sessions. We're going to try to answer a few more questions. But again, if we don't get to your questions, feel free to email enroll@stonybrook.edu, and we'll be happy to answer you there. So our students can apply now. As Noelle asked, can students apply early action or early decision? We can't do that here, so how early can we apply? Our applications are open. We will begin processing them for the fall 2022 in September, but as soon as you want to start that application, you are more than welcome to. And the nice thing now about Common App and SUNY App is you can start your application and then get back to it as you want to fill it out, and it's not until you hit that submit button that we actually get the completed application. If you want to get started early, it's always good to do that. As far as good SAT or ACT scores, and varies by major, they kind of have a range. Our middle 50% on average has somewhere between about a 1250 and a 1400 for the middle 50% of all of our applicants. But again, you have to consider that that doesn't matter to you. What matters to you isn't what the middle 50% has. Like, yes, if you've got like in 700, it's kind of a stretch. Maybe apply test optional. But if you're considering like, what's a good SAT, what GPA do I need, just do the best you can for you. Apply to colleges that have the right fit for you. Look out often, and always know that there's always a transfer option. You don't get in as a first year. We have fantastic transfer options, and we can always work with a student to make sure that you're completing the right courses at your current institution. I'm sorry, I'm totally taking every question away from Emilio, so I'll get to one, and probably can get to maybe one or two more.
Great.
Emilio, this is a good one. Demetria asked, is it possibly part as an engineering major and pre-med track simultaneously?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, our students here at SBU are so diverse, and they're so interested in doing almost everything that they possibly can, whether it's campus life, academics, employment, internship. So we definitely have students who are interested in double majoring, or students who have one major and want to be on a specific track. So yes, our tracks here at the institution are not majors, they're just solely tracks. And so what that means is you can be in any different field, any major, and be on the pre-med track. Okay, so we want our students to really diversify their experience. So if you are, for example, an engineering major, you would have your engineering advisor and your set engineering coursework that needs to be fulfilled. And then you would work with your pre-med advisor or pre-health advisor who will make sure you're meeting those requirements as well. And really by the end of your time here, you'll be able to apply to a future medical program because you did meet those requirements regardless of your major.
It's actually, Stony Brook has so many amazing programs, over 200 academic programs, but for those who are interested in pre-med, which is a popular program here, it is amazing that it is a track that you complete your bio, your chem, your calc classes, all the classes you need to get into medical school, along with any major of interest. So whatever you want to do, however you want to find your passion, if you change your major, if you start as bio and you switch to English, all of those things, whatever you're passionate about and you will do the best in, you'll supplement them with the pre-med prerequisites, and you'll have everything you need to apply to med school towards the end. And we have some phenomenal pre-med advisors who help guide you along the way, along with your major advisor.
Yeah, and I'll just mention, oh, sorry. Yeah, I was just going to mention for those pre-professional advisors, they're working with you in regards to academics and meeting those prerequisite requirements, as Jacqueline mentioned, but they also know that, admissions committees are looking at you holistically, even when you're applying to graduate programs. So they're there to help you with internship opportunities. We have a university hospital on campus, so we have lots of students who may shadow or volunteer over there to really see if it's the right fit for them, and making sure you're diversifying your experience and getting out there, whether it's on campus or off campus, during your time here to make sure it's the right path for you. So definitely a good idea to align with one of those tracks if you do have a pre-professional interest.
And again, you can apply and change your major while you're here. You'll work with advising. The best thing is that you get to take these undergraduate courses called the Stony Brook curriculum, which has kind of like a tasting menu of courses throughout a whole bunch of different programs and departments that you may not think that you want or even need, because you're like, oh, I'm definitely going to do this. And then you take something and you fall in love with it. And that is one of my favorite things about college. I went to school to be a math teacher and a math major, and I decided that that wasn't for me. And I was so lucky because I was like, oh, I'm required to take a speech communication class. I am terrified of talking in public. But I'm going to take this class because I'm required to. And that became one of my majors. I fell in love with English, writing, and analyzing, because as much as I loved math, what I really loved was the analyzing, the reviewing, kind of the breakdown of everything. And so it works out really well. And so when you're applying on your application, you really want to consider both the restricted majors, applying undecided. And I can't stress enough that you may think that you want to be one thing, but we have so many phenomenal programs. Go to a school that is extremely well-rounded. If you may fall in love with journalism after taking a news literacy course, you may fall in love with psychology. There's so many different areas that you can go into that can really help you find what you're good at and grow.
Yeah, and just to add on that, definitely take advantage of the opportunities at the institution. So like Jacqueline said, you're going to explore different academic programs and interests, but get out there and align with campus life. Look into the different organizations, ask advisors and your faculty and professors, maybe some research opportunities, and really making sure you're having a holistic experience there so that when you move on to the next step, you're pretty much ready and prepared to go out there and face the real world.
So Emilio, as we finish up, any last minute advice for students who are starting that college application process that you really want to dig into them?
Yeah, I think that throughout this whole presentation, really, we kept referring back to fit. And I think that's important because what you need and what you want may not be the same thing as your peer or your friend. So you're going to want to make sure you're jotting down what are the things that you're interested in, whether you're looking for a specific program and you want to see if they have the best resources for that program, whether you're looking for a specific, maybe you're interested in sports, maybe you're interested in a specific club, maybe you really value living on campus. So you want to see what has a really good residential program. There's so many things a part of an institution that you're going to want to make sure you're finding the right fit, which is why you're doing everything early. You're doing your research, as we mentioned, and you're reaching out to these admissions counselors and asking all of the questions that you have. No question will be turned away, and no question is a bad question. So definitely do your research, get out there and do everything very early on.
I think that's all I can say too, is just don't be afraid to talk to us. Don't be afraid to talk to the colleges that you're applying to. Use your school counselor as a resource and connect with the universities that you're interested in. So we really look forward to reviewing your application, and we hope to see you on campus soon. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
It's a
Bye.
pleasure having you. Bye-bye.